The rain had finally stopped when I left the office that Tuesday evening. It was already past 8, and the streets of downtown were nearly empty. I work as a data analyst for a mid-sized insurance company, the kind of job where you blend into the background, process numbers, and go home without anyone really noticing you were there. That's exactly how I liked it. My name is Webb. I'm 32 years old, and until that night, my life was predictably boring. I was walking toward the subway station, checking my phone for the weather forecast, when I nearly stepped on it. A wallet. Not just any wallet, but an expensive-looking leather one, the kind that probably cost more than my weekly grocery budget. It was lying in a puddle, partially hidden under a newspaper that the wind had plastered against the curb. My first instinct was to keep walking. In a city this size, you learn not to get involved in other people's problems. But something made me stop. Maybe it was the fact that I'd lost my own wallet 3 months ago, and someone had actually returned it to me. Karma, right? I picked it up, shook off the water, and looked around to see if anyone nearby might have dropped it. The street was empty except for a homeless man sleeping in a doorway half a block away and a taxi disappearing around the corner. I opened the wallet, hoping to find some identification so I could return it properly. Inside there were 6 crisp $100 bills, 3 credit cards, a driver's license, and tucked in a hidden compartment behind the cards, a small folded piece of paper. The license belonged to someone named Richard Caldwell, 47 years old, with an address in the wealthy Riverside Heights neighborhood. The photo showed a man with graying temples, sharp features, and the kind of confident smile that suggested he was used to getting what he wanted. I should have just taken the wallet to the nearest police station. That would have been the smart thing to do. But $600 in cash. That seemed like too much money to trust to a lost and found box. I decided I'd return it directly to Mr. Caldwell's address the next day after work. Good deed done, conscience clear, life goes on. But then I noticed the folded paper again. It was wedged in so tightly that it seemed deliberately hidden. Curiosity got the better of me. I unfolded it carefully, trying not to tear the damp paper. The message was handwritten in black ink, shaky letters that suggested it had been written in a hurry. If you're reading this, they already found me. The storage unit at Secure Space on 10th Avenue, Unit 214. Password Blackbird. Trust no one from the company, they're watching everything. My hands started shaking. This wasn't just a lost wallet. This was something else entirely. Something I definitely shouldn't be involved in. I looked around again, suddenly feeling exposed under the streetlights. The homeless man was still sleeping. A young couple walked past on the other side of the street, laughing about something. Everything looked normal. But the note had planted a seed of paranoia in my mind. I pulled out my phone and searched for Richard Caldwell. The first result made my stomach drop. The headline read, "Local business executive found dead in apparent suicide." The article was dated 3 days ago. Richard Caldwell, senior vice president at Meridian Solutions, had been found dead in his home office from what appeared to be a self-inflicted gunshot wound. He left behind a wife and 2 teenage daughters. The company released a statement expressing shock and sadness, mentioning that Caldwell had been under stress recently, but gave no specific details. The police had classified it as a suicide, and the case was considered closed. I read the article twice, then a third time. The man whose wallet I was holding had died 3 days ago, but if he died 3 days ago, how did his wallet end up on the street tonight? And more importantly, what did his note mean? If you're reading this, they already found me. That didn't sound like someone planning to take their own life. That sounded like someone who was afraid. I should have dropped the wallet in the nearest mailbox and walked away. I should have convinced myself it was none of my business. But I couldn't stop thinking about that note, about the desperate handwriting, about a man who knew he was in danger and tried to leave a message behind. Before I could talk myself out of it, I was searching for Secure Space on 10th Avenue on my phone. It was a 24-hour storage facility about 15 blocks from where I stood. I could be there in half an hour if I took the subway. Unit 214. Password Blackbird. The rational part of my brain was screaming at me to go home, to forget I ever found this wallet, to let the dead man's secret stay buried with him. But the other part, the part that had spent 32 years living a safe, predictable, utterly unremarkable life, wanted to know what was in that storage unit. What had Richard Caldwell been so desperate to hide? What had been worth dying for? I flagged down a passing taxi instead of taking the subway. I told myself I was just going to look, just going to see if the unit even existed. I wasn't committing to anything. I could turn back at any moment. The storage facility was exactly what you'd expect. A grey concrete building with fluorescent lights and the smell of dust and cardboard. The night attendant barely looked up from his phone when I walked in. I told him I needed to access my unit, number 214. He asked for my name. Richard Caldwell, I lied, surprised by how easily the words came out. He asked for ID. I showed him the driver's license from the wallet, holding my breath, half hoping he'd notice it was 3 days out of date in terms of the owner being alive. But he just glanced at it, nodded, and asked for the password. Blackbird, I said. He handed me a key card and pointed toward the elevator. 4th floor. Turn right when you exit. My heart was pounding as I rode the elevator up. What was I doing? This was crazy. I was impersonating a dead man to break into a storage unit that might contain evidence of what exactly? A crime? A conspiracy? Or maybe just old furniture and boxes of Christmas decorations? The hallway on the 4th floor was long and silent, lined with identical orange doors. I found Unit 214 near the end. The keycard worked smoothly, and the door rolled up with a metallic clatter that echoed down the empty hallway. Inside was a space about the size of a walk-in closet. No furniture, no boxes of junk, just a folding table against the back wall, and on that table, 3 things. A laptop computer, a stack of manila folders about 6 inches high, and a white envelope with one word written on it in the same shaky handwriting as the note, evidence. I stood frozen in the doorway, staring at these items that a dead man had hidden away. Every instinct told me to leave, to close the door and forget I'd ever been here. But I'd come this far. I stepped inside and picked up the envelope. It wasn't sealed. Inside were photographs. The first one showed Richard Caldwell shaking hands with another man in what looked like an expensive restaurant. Both were smiling. The second photo showed the same 2 men, but this time Caldwell's expression was different. Angry, his finger pointing at the other man's chest. The third photo showed Caldwell getting into a car with a woman who definitely wasn't the wife from the news article. I flipped through more photos. Meetings in parking garages, exchanges of briefcases, people I didn't recognize in situations that looked increasingly suspicious. At the bottom of the stack was a photo that made me freeze. It was taken from across a street, zoomed in on a cafe window. Inside, clearly visible, was Richard Caldwell sitting at a table, and across from him, leaning in close as if sharing a secret, was someone I recognized immediately. It was my boss, Michael Torres, the senior manager at my insurance company, the man I reported to every single day. My hands started shaking so badly, I almost dropped the photographs. This couldn't be a coincidence. This had to mean something. But what? What possible connection could there be between a dead executive at Meridian Solutions and my boring insurance company boss? I was about to dig into the manila folders when I heard it. Footsteps in the hallway outside. Slow, deliberate footsteps that stopped right in front of Unit 214. Then a voice, male and unfamiliar. "I know you're in there, and I know you're not Richard Caldwell." My entire body went rigid. The photograph slipped from my fingers and scattered across the concrete floor. For a moment that felt like an eternity. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't think. The only sound was my heart hammering against my ribcage so loudly I was certain whoever was outside could hear it. "I'm not here to hurt you," the voice continued. It was calm, almost gentle, which somehow made it more terrifying. "But we need to talk, right now." I looked around frantically for another exit, knowing full well there wasn't one. Storage units don't have back doors. I was trapped in a 10 by 10 foot concrete box with nowhere to go. The laptop and folders were still on the table, the photographs scattered at my feet. Evidence of what I still didn't know, but clearly evidence that someone else wanted very badly. "I'm going to count to 5, the voice said. "If you don't come out, I'm coming in. And if I have to come in, this conversation is going to go very differently." 1. My mind raced through options. I could try to fight, but I'd never been in a real fight in my life. I could scream for help, but the night attendant was 4 floors down and probably still absorbed in his phone. I could try to bluff my way out, but I was holding a dead man's wallet and standing in his secret storage unit. 2. I grabbed the envelope of photographs and shoved it inside my jacket. If this went badly, at least I'd have some evidence on me. Evidence of what I'd figure out later, assuming there was a later. 3. "Okay," I shouted, my voice cracking embarrassingly. "Okay, I'm coming out. Don't do anything crazy. Then we understand each other. Come out slowly. Keep your hands where I can see them." I stepped out of the storage unit with my hands raised, feeling ridiculous and terrified in equal measure. The man standing in the hallway wasn't what I expected. He was younger than the voice suggested, maybe late 30s, wearing jeans and a dark jacket. He had the kind of face you'd forget 5 minutes after meeting him, which I suspected was intentional. His hands were empty, but the way he stood suggested he could change that situation very quickly if needed. "Marcus Webb," he said, and my blood ran cold. 32 years old, data analyst at Pemberton Insurance, lives alone in a studio apartment on Oak Street, rides the number 7 subway to work every morning, usually gets coffee from the shop on the corner, black, no sugar. How do you know all that? My voice came out as barely more than a whisper. The same way I know you found Richard Caldwell's wallet approximately 2 hours and 17 minutes ago on the corner of 5th and Market Street. The same way I know you took a taxi here instead of the subway, which isn't your normal pattern. When you're watching someone, Marcus, you notice the deviations. You've been watching me for how long? Does it matter? He took a step closer, and I instinctively backed up against the wall. What matters is what happens next. You have 2 choices. Choice 1, you give me everything you took from that unit. You go home, you forget this ever happened, and you live your nice, quiet, boring life. Choice 2, you try to be a hero, and you end up like Richard Caldwell. He didn't kill himself, did he? The man's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Is that really the question you want answered right now? Think carefully, Marcus. Think about whether you really want to know the truth. Because once you know, there's no going back to your comfortable ignorance. I should have taken choice 1. Every survival instinct I had was screaming at me to hand over the photographs, apologize profusely, and run home to my studio apartment. But something stopped me. Maybe it was the way this man knew everything about my pathetic little routine. Maybe it was the arrogance in his voice, the certainty that I'd fold like everyone else probably did. Or maybe it was the memory of that desperate handwriting. Trust no one from the company. Who do you work for? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. You're asking the wrong questions, but I'll give you credit for having more spine than I expected. Let me be clearer about your situation. Richard Caldwell thought he was clever. He thought he could collect evidence, build a case, expose corruption. He thought the truth would protect him. How did that work out? If you're trying to scare me, it's working. Good. Fear keeps people alive. He pulled out his phone and turned the screen toward me. It showed a live security camera feed of my apartment building. I could see my front door, the flickering hallway light that the landlord never fixed, the crack in the wall by the stairwell. I'm showing you this so you understand something important. There is nowhere you can go that we can't find you. There is nothing you can do that we won't know about. My mouth went dry. What do you want? I already told you. Give me everything from the unit. The laptop, the folders, the photographs. All of it. And then what? You let me go and hope I keep my mouth shut? That's exactly what happens because you're a smart man, Marcus. Smart enough to know that going to the police would be pointless. You think we don't have people there? You think Richard's death was ruled a suicide by accident? He pocketed his phone and crossed his arms. Here's what you don't understand yet. Meridian Solutions isn't just some tech company. The work they do, the contracts they have, the people they're connected to, it goes deeper than you can imagine. And your little insurance company? Pemberton Insurance has been laundering money for Meridian's offshore accounts for the last 4 years. Your boss, Michael Torres, has been the point man on that operation. The hallway seemed to tilt sideways. That's impossible. We're just a regular insurance company. We process claims. You process claims, yes. But you also process certain claims that don't exist. Policies for people who aren't real. Payouts that go to shell companies. All buried in the thousands of legitimate transactions that happen every day. It's brilliant, really. Who audits insurance claims closely enough to notice the patterns, and who would suspect boring, reliable Marcus Webb of being involved? I'm not involved in anything. Not yet. But you are now. The moment you picked up that wallet, you became part of this story. He took another step forward. Richard Caldwell was going to blow the whistle on the whole operation. He had evidence of everything. The money laundering, the fraudulent contracts, the political bribes, all of it. He was going to go public. So we stopped him. We? Who's we? The people who make sure certain secrets stay buried. The people who ensure that business continues as usual. The people you really, really don't want to cross. His voice dropped lower. Last chance, Marcus. Give me what's in that jacket. Give me access to the unit and walk away. Or I make one phone call and by tomorrow morning, you're the primary suspect in Richard Caldwell's murder. We've got your fingerprints on the wallet, camera footage of you entering this facility, using a dead man's identity, and we can plant whatever digital evidence we need to make it stick. I felt the envelope pressing against my chest under my jacket. Inside were photographs that could potentially expose everything he'd just described, evidence that people had killed to keep secret, evidence that could either save me or destroy me, depending on what I did in the next 60 seconds. How do I know you won't kill me anyway? I asked. You don't. But consider the alternative. If we wanted you dead, you'd be dead already. You're not important enough to kill, Marcus. You're just a guy who found a wallet. Give us what we want and you go back to being nobody. That's the best offer you're going to get. My hand moved toward my jacket, and I saw him relax slightly, confidence returning to his face. He thought he'd won. He thought I was just another scared nobody who'd fold under pressure. He was probably right. But then I heard footsteps again, this time coming from the other direction. Multiple footsteps. Running. The man's expression changed instantly from confidence to alarm. He spun around just as 3 people in dark uniforms rounded the corner, flashlights blazing. They weren't police. The uniforms were wrong, private security maybe, but they were moving with purpose. "Federal agents!" one of them shouted, which seemed unlikely given they weren't in FBI jackets, but the man in front of me didn't stop to verify. He ran. He sprinted past me toward the emergency exit at the far end of the hall, moving faster than seemed possible. The 3 pursuers followed without even glancing at me, their footsteps echoing as they disappeared through the stairwell door. I stood frozen in the hallway, my back against the cold concrete wall, trying to process what had just happened. Federal agents? Here? How? Why? Then a 4th person appeared from around the corner, walking calmly while everyone else was running. She was a woman in her mid-40s, wearing a business suit that looked expensive, even in the harsh fluorescent lighting. She had short black hair streaked with grey, and carried herself with the kind of authority that comes from years of being in charge. "Mr. Webb," she said, as if we were meeting at a coffee shop instead of a storage facility, where I'd just been threatened by someone who might have murdered a man. "I think we need to have a conversation. A truthful one this time. My name is Detective Sarah Chen, and I've been investigating Richard Caldwell's death since the day his body was found. I don't believe it was suicide, and I think you just became the most important witness in this case." She gestured toward the open storage unit. "Now, why don't you show me what Richard was hiding? And then you're going to tell me everything that just happened. Every single word." I looked at her, then at the storage unit, then back at her. Nothing about this night made sense anymore. I'd gone from finding a wallet to being threatened to being rescued by people who may or may not actually be federal agents. My boring, predictable life had imploded in less than 3 hours. "Am I under arrest?" I managed to ask. "Not yet," Detective Chen said. "But the night is young, and that depends entirely on what you tell me in the next few minutes. So let's start with the easy question. What's in your jacket?" I pulled the envelope from my jacket with trembling hands and gave it to Detective Chen. She opened it carefully, her expression neutral as she flipped through the photographs. If she was surprised by what she saw, she didn't show it. Years of police work had probably trained that reaction out of her. "Interesting," she said finally, sliding the photos back into the envelope. "Very interesting. But this is just the tip of the iceberg, isn't it?" She walked past me into the storage unit and examined the laptop and folders on the table. Richard Caldwell was a meticulous man, paranoid, but with good reason. He knew they were watching him, so he created insurance. This storage unit, these documents. He thought if he gathered enough evidence, he'd be untouchable. "But they killed him anyway," I said quietly. "They did. And they made it look like a suicide well enough that my department closed the case in 48 hours. Clean, efficient, no loose ends." She turned to face me. "Except Richard left one loose end. He put that note in his wallet, probably hoping someone honest would find it. Someone who didn't know enough to be scared, someone exactly like you. The man who was just here, he said he'd been watching me. He knew everything about my life, my routine, where I live, where I work. He said my company has been laundering money for Meridian Solutions." Detective Chen nodded slowly. "We've suspected Pemberton Insurance for months, but we haven't been able to prove anything. The paper trail is too clean, too carefully constructed. Whoever set this up knew what they were doing. Your boss, Michael Torres, he's been with the company for how long? 6 years. He hired me 4 years ago. And in those 4 years, did you ever notice anything unusual? Transactions that didn't make sense? Claims that seemed suspicious?" I thought back through 4 years of spreadsheets and policy numbers, trying to remember anything out of the ordinary. But that was the problem with my job. It was designed to be boring, repetitive, unmemorable. Thousands of claims flowing through the system every week, each one looking exactly like the last. "No," I admitted, "but I'm just a data analyst. I process claims, I run reports, I don't see the big picture. If there was fraud happening, they'd make sure people like me wouldn't notice it." "Smart," Chen said. "Use the honest employees as cover. The paper trail looks legitimate, because most of it is legitimate. You hide a few fake claims among thousands of real ones and nobody questions it. It's actually brilliant." She pulled out her phone and made a call. "It's me. Send the tech team to secure space on 10th Avenue, 4th floor, Unit 214. Full forensic workup on a laptop and associated documents, and put a protection detail on Marcus Webb's apartment immediately. Yes, I know it's late. I don't care. Do it now." She ended the call and looked at me with an expression that might have been sympathy. "Mr. Webb, I need you to understand something. The man who threatened you tonight, he wasn't bluffing. These people have killed before, and they'll kill again to protect their operation. Richard Caldwell is dead. 2 months before that, a forensic accountant named Jennifer Martinez died in a car accident that wasn't an accident. 3 months before that, a Meridian Solutions employee named Thomas Park disappeared completely. The official story is he ran away with a mistress to Mexico. I don't believe that for a second. How many people are involved in this? That's what we're trying to figure out. At minimum, we're looking at senior executives at Meridian Solutions, whoever runs their security operation, and at least one person high up at Pemberton Insurance. But it could go deeper. The money they're laundering has to go somewhere, which means shell companies, offshore accounts, possibly international connections. This isn't just corporate fraud, Mr. Webb. This is organized crime wearing a business suit. A tech team arrived 15 minutes later, along with 2 uniformed officers who Detective Chen introduced as my protection detail. I watched as they carefully photographed everything in the storage unit, bagged the laptop and folders as evidence, and documented every detail. The whole process took nearly 2 hours. Detective Chen had me sit in the hallway and tell her everything, starting from the moment I found the wallet. I left nothing out. The note, the newspaper article about Caldwell's death, my stupid decision to come to the storage facility, the conversation with the man who'd threatened me. She recorded everything on her phone, stopping me occasionally to ask clarifying questions. "This man who confronted you," she said. "Describe him again. Every detail you can remember." Late 30s, maybe 5'10", dark hair, average build. He had one of those faces that you'd forget immediately. Actually, that's what struck me. He looked deliberately forgettable, like he'd practiced being invisible. That matches the description we have for someone we've been calling John Doe 7. He's appeared in surveillance footage near both Jennifer Martinez's car crash and Thomas Park's apartment the day he disappeared. We've never gotten a clear photo or a real name. He's a professional, probably former military or intelligence. He said they had people in the police department. He said going to the authorities would be pointless. He's not entirely wrong, Chen admitted, which is why this investigation has been kept very quiet. My team consists of exactly 4 people, myself included. We report directly to the district attorney, and we've been building this case in complete secrecy for 3 months. The official story is that we're investigating insurance fraud, which is technically true, but it's like saying the Titanic had a small leak. Why are you telling me all this? Because you're in this now, whether you like it or not, and because I need your help. She leaned forward, her expression intense. Richard Caldwell collected evidence, but he did it from the outside. He was investigating Meridian Solutions, trying to prove they were corrupt, but he didn't have access to the Pemberton Insurance side of the operation. That's where the money actually moves. That's where the fraud actually happens. I felt my stomach drop. You want me to spy on my own company? I want you to do your job exactly the way you've always done it, but this time you'll be looking for specific things. Patterns in the claims data, policies that don't quite add up, payouts to companies that might not exist. Your boss, Michael Torres, has been very careful, but nobody's perfect. There will be mistakes buried in that data somewhere. You just need to find them. And if I say no, then we put you in protective custody until we can make arrests, which could take months. You lose your job, your apartment, your entire life. You go into hiding while we try to build a case without you. And honestly, Mr. Webb, our chances of success drop significantly without someone on the inside. So I don't really have a choice. You always have a choice, but some choices are better than others. She pulled out a business card and wrote a number on the back. This is my direct line. It's a secure phone, encrypted, untraceable. You call this number if you find anything, if you feel threatened, or if anything at all seems wrong. Don't use your regular phone. Don't use email. Don't communicate through any channel that could be monitored. Assume everything at your workplace is compromised. I took the card and stared at it. 24 hours ago, my biggest concern was whether to get Chinese food or pizza for dinner. Now I was being recruited as an undercover witness in a corporate conspiracy that had already killed at least 3 people. What about the man who threatened me? He knows who I am, where I live. He said they'd frame me for Caldwell's murder if I didn't cooperate. We'll have officers watching your apartment around the clock, and we're going to use that threat to our advantage. As far as they know, you gave up the evidence and agreed to keep quiet. They think you're scared and compliant. That makes you useful to us. They won't move against you unless you give them a reason to. Unless they figure out I'm helping you, then we move fast and make arrests before they can react. But Mr. Webb, I'm not going to lie to you. This is dangerous. These people don't hesitate to eliminate threats. If you do this, you need to be smart, careful, and paranoid. Trust nobody at work. Don't change your routine. Don't act suspicious. Just do your job and watch for patterns. One of the tech team members approached us. "Detective, we've got the preliminary scan of the laptop. You need to see this." We followed him back into the storage unit where they'd set up a portable computer station. The tech pulled up a spreadsheet on his screen, and I immediately recognized the format. It was the same database structure we used at Pemberton Insurance. "Caldwell had access to your company's entire claims database," the tech explained. "Don't ask me how he got it, but this is a complete mirror going back 4 years. And he'd been running analysis on it. Look at this." He highlighted several rows in the spreadsheet. "These are all claims filed in the last 18 months. Different policyholders, different amounts, different dates, but watch what happens when I sort by payout destination." The screen refreshed, and suddenly a pattern emerged. Dozens of claims, seemingly random, all routing payments to a handful of offshore accounts through a web of shell companies. "The total amount laundered through these accounts is just over $47 million, the tech said. "And that's only what Caldwell had time to identify. There could be more." Detective Chen whistled softly. $47 million. No wonder they killed him. "Mr. Webb, did you process any of these claims?" I leaned closer to the screen, scrolling through the list. My employee ID appeared next to at least 15 of them. "I processed these, yes, but they looked completely legitimate. Valid policy numbers, proper documentation, everything checked out. I had no reason to question them." "Because they were designed not to be questioned," Chen said. "Torres would make sure the paperwork was perfect. The policy numbers matched real accounts. Everything looked normal on the surface. You were just doing your job. But now you know what to look for. Now you can identify the pattern." I stared at my employee ID repeated over and over in that list. 15 claims that I'd personally approved, totaling just over $8 million. Money that had gone to criminals, processed by my hands, approved with my credentials. I'd been an unwitting accomplice to fraud and money laundering for months, maybe years. "I want to help," I said quietly. "Tell me what you need me to do." Detective Chen smiled for the first time that night. "Welcome to the team, Mr. Webb. Let's take down some very bad people." The next morning I sat at my desk at Pemberton Insurance trying to act like everything was normal. It was the hardest performance of my life. My hands shook every time I touched the keyboard. Every footstep in the hallway made me jump. When Michael Torres walked past my cubicle and said, "Good morning, Marcus," I nearly knocked over my coffee. "Morning," I managed to reply, my voice sounding strange even to my own ears. He paused and looked at me more carefully. "You okay? You look tired." "Didn't sleep well, probably something I ate." Torres nodded sympathetically. "I hate when that happens. Listen, I'm going to need those quarterly reports by end of day. Think you can manage that?" "Absolutely, no problem." He walked away and I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. This was my boss. The man who'd hired me, who'd written positive performance reviews, who'd bought the office pizza every Friday. The man who was also laundering millions of dollars and connected to at least 3 murders. Detective Chen had given me specific instructions. Act normal, do my regular work, but also run queries on the database looking for the patterns Caldwell had identified. She'd given me a list of shell company names to watch for, account numbers that appeared in the offshore transactions, and specific date ranges when large transfers had occurred. The problem was that running those kinds of queries wasn't part of my normal job. If someone was monitoring my computer activity, and Chen assured me they probably were, unusual database searches would raise red flags immediately. I needed to be smart about this. I spent the morning working on the quarterly reports Torres had requested, exactly as I always did. But during my lunch break, I did something different. Instead of eating at my desk like usual, I went to a coffee shop 3 blocks away. Detective Chen had given me a laptop, a clean one with no connection to the police department. I pulled it out and started searching through the data Caldwell had collected, cross-referencing it with my own knowledge of the company's systems. The patterns were there once you knew what to look for. Claims that were approved within hours instead of the usual days-long review process. Policies issued to individuals with names that seemed almost generic. John Anderson, Mary Johnson, Robert Williams. Addresses that existed but led to empty buildings or mail forwarding services. Payouts that all eventually traced back to the same network of offshore accounts. And there, buried in the metadata of dozens of transactions, was Michael Torres's digital signature. He'd personally approved each one, bypassing the normal review protocols that would have caught the fraud. But there was something else, something that made my blood run cold. My own employee credentials had been used to process these claims, yes, but there were other credentials too. At least 6 other employees at Pemberton Insurance had processed fraudulent claims spread out over 4 years. Some of them I knew: Jennifer Park from accounting, David Wu from claims processing, Sarah Mitchell from the legal department. Others were names I'd seen on the company directory, but never really interacted with. Were they all involved, or were they, like me, unwitting accomplices being used to provide cover for the operation? I needed to find out. I took photos of the most damning evidence on Chen's laptop, encrypted them the way she'd shown me, and uploaded them to a secure server. Then I went back to the office and tried to act like a normal employee, doing normal work for the rest of the afternoon. At 4:30 my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Conference room B, 5 minutes, come alone." My heart started racing. This wasn't Detective Chen's secure number. This was something else. I looked around the office, trying to spot anyone watching me, but everyone seemed absorbed in their work. The conference rooms were on the 3rd floor, in a section of the building that was usually empty after 4. I should have called Chen immediately. That was the protocol. But what if this was a legitimate work meeting? What if acting suspicious now would blow everything? I decided to compromise. I'd go to the meeting but keep my phone in my pocket with the line open to Chen's secure number. If anything went wrong, she'd hear it. Conference room B was dark when I arrived. I flipped on the lights and found myself face to face with Michael Torres, but he wasn't alone. Sitting next to him was the man from the storage facility, the one who'd threatened me. And standing by the door was a woman I'd never seen before, tall and severe, wearing an expensive suit that screamed corporate lawyer. "Close the door, Marcus," Torres said. His voice was different now. The friendly boss persona had vanished completely, replaced by something cold and calculating. I closed the door but kept my hand near my pocket. "What's this about?" "I think you know," Torres said. "Did you really think we wouldn't notice? You go to work the morning after visiting Richard Caldwell's storage unit, and you think we wouldn't be watching you extra carefully." The man from the storage facility smiled. "You're not as clever as you think, Marcus. That coffee shop you went to, we own the building, the laptop you were using. We've been monitoring it remotely since Detective Chen gave it to you. Every file you accessed, every photo you took, every upload you made, we saw all of it." My stomach dropped. Chen had said the laptop was secure, untraceable, but they'd been watching the entire time. They knew everything. "Detective Chen is walking into a trap right now," the woman said, speaking for the first time. "Based on the information you provided, she's obtaining arrest warrants for 3 people at Meridian Solutions. She thinks she's about to crack the case wide open. She doesn't know that 2 of the judges who would sign those warrants work for us. By 6 o'clock tonight, she'll be suspended from duty, pending an investigation into evidence tampering and witness intimidation. Her entire case will fall apart." "You can't do that," I said. But even as the words left my mouth, I knew how naive they sounded. "We've been doing this for years," Torres said. "We have systems in place, contingencies." Richard Caldwell thought he was smart too. He thought if he collected enough evidence, if he built an airtight case, that would protect him. But evidence doesn't matter if you control the people who evaluate it. Judges, cops, prosecutors, everyone has a price or a weakness. Caldwell learned that too late. "So what happens now? You kill me like you killed him?" "That depends entirely on you," the woman said. "We're offering you a choice, a real one, not like the false choice Detective Chen gave you. You can either join us properly, become an actual part of this operation instead of an unwitting participant, or you can refuse and face the consequences. And the consequences are..." Torres pulled out a folder and slid it across the table. Inside were documents with my name on them. Bank statements showing deposits I'd never made, emails I'd never sent, outlining my supposed involvement in the money laundering scheme, signed confessions in my handwriting, or something very close to it. "If you refuse to cooperate," Torres said, "these documents become evidence in a federal investigation. You'll be arrested for conspiracy, fraud, money laundering, and as an accessory to Richard Caldwell's murder. You'll spend the next 20 to 30 years in prison. Detective Chen won't be able to help you because she'll be fighting her own legal battles. The evidence against you is overwhelming. It's all fake. Those aren't real. Can you prove that?" the woman asked. "Can you prove beyond a reasonable doubt that you didn't write those emails, didn't make those deposits, didn't conspire with Richard Caldwell? Because we have forensic evidence, witnesses, and a paper trail that says you did. And unlike Detective Chen's case against us, our case against you will actually make it to trial." I looked at the 3 of them and suddenly I understood. This wasn't about killing me. It was about control. They wanted to turn me into an active participant, someone who couldn't testify against them without incriminating himself. They wanted to make me complicit. "What would I have to do?" I asked quietly. Torres smiled. Nothing too difficult. Continue processing claims like you have been, but now you'll know which ones are part of our operation. You'll help us refine the system, make it more efficient. You'll identify other employees who might be useful or who might be threats. You'll be our eyes and ears inside the legitimate side of the business. And in exchange, you make more money than you ever dreamed of. That studio apartment you live in, you'll be able to afford a penthouse. That old car you drive, upgrade to something with actual horsepower. You'll be taken care of, Marcus, protected, made wealthy beyond your current comprehension. All you have to do is be smart and keep your mouth shut. The man from the storage facility leaned forward. Think about it, Marcus. What's the alternative? You try to be a hero and you end up in prison or dead. You cooperate with us and you live a life most people only fantasize about. It's not even a difficult choice. But I was thinking about something else. I was thinking about Richard Caldwell, who tried to expose this corruption and died for it. About Jennifer Martinez and Thomas Park and whoever else these people had killed to protect their operation. About Detective Chen, who was walking into a trap right now because of information I'd provided. And I was thinking about the phone in my pocket, still connected to Chen's secure line, recording every word of this conversation. I need time to think about it, I said. You have until tomorrow morning, the woman said. 9 a.m. You'll either show up for work ready to be part of the team, or you'll show up to find federal agents arresting you. Your choice. They stood up to leave. Torres paused at the door and looked back at me. For what it's worth, Marcus, I hope you make the smart choice. You're a good worker. I'd hate to see you throw your life away over misplaced idealism. Then they were gone, and I was alone in the conference room, with my hands shaking and my heart pounding. I pulled out my phone and saw that the call to Chen's secure line had been recording the entire time. I had everything. Their threats, their confession, their entire plan. But they'd said Chen was walking into a trap. I checked the time, 4:55. She'd said she was getting the arrest warrants at 5:30. I had 35 minutes to warn her. I ran from the conference room, down the stairs, out of the building. I didn't care who saw me or what they thought. I called Chen's secure number directly this time, praying she'd answer. She picked up on the third ring. Webb, what's wrong? It's a trap. The arrest warrants, the judges, they're compromised. They know everything about your investigation. They're going to suspend you and destroy your case. You can't go through with it. There was a pause. Then Chen said something that made my blood freeze. I know, Marcus. I've known for the last 2 hours. That's why I didn't go to those judges. I went to the FBI instead. And they're very interested in the recording you just made. Federal agents are moving on Meridian Solutions and Pemberton Insurance right now. Torres, the man from the storage facility, that lawyer. All of them are about to be arrested. But how did you... The laptop I gave you wasn't compromised, but I let them think it was. I fed them false information through it while you were gathering real evidence through other channels. Everything you uploaded to that secure server, that went straight to the FBI. The meeting you just had, federal agents were listening to every word in real time. We have them, Marcus. We have all of them. I heard sirens in the distance getting closer. Are you telling me this whole thing was a setup? I'm telling you that Richard Caldwell's evidence was good, but it wasn't enough. We needed them to expose themselves, to make threats, to prove the full scope of their operation. You helped us do that. You were braver than you know. The sirens were louder now. I looked up and saw black SUVs pulling up in front of the Pemberton Insurance building. Federal agents in tactical gear were pouring out, moving with precise coordination. What happens to me now? I asked. Now you give a statement. You testify when the trials happen, and you go back to your life. A life where you helped take down one of the largest corporate criminal conspiracies in the state's history. Not bad for a guy who just wanted to return a lost wallet. I watched as they led Michael Torres out of the building in handcuffs. He saw me standing across the street, and our eyes met for a moment. Then he looked away, defeated. Detective Chen found me an hour later, after the initial arrests were complete. 43 people in custody, she said, including 6 Meridian Solutions executives, 12 Pemberton Insurance employees, 3 judges and 2 police officers. The forensic accountants are going through the evidence now, but preliminary estimates suggest we've disrupted a money laundering operation that moved over $200 million in the last 4 years. $200 million, I repeated, stunned. I had no idea it was that big. Neither did we until we had access to all of Caldwell's files and your corroborating evidence. He died trying to expose this, Marcus. But because of what you did, his death won't be in vain. These people will face justice. I thought about the note in the wallet. If you're reading this, they already found me. Richard Caldwell had known he was going to die, but he'd tried to leave breadcrumbs for someone to follow, someone honest enough to care, brave enough to act, and lucky enough to have Detective Chen on their side. "What happens to Pemberton Insurance?" I asked. "Do I still have a job?" Chen smiled. "The company will be restructured, thoroughly audited and placed under federal oversight, but they'll need honest employees who understand the systems and can help rebuild trust. I think you'll have a job for as long as you want it. Probably with a significant promotion, actually." 3 months later, I stood in a courthouse giving testimony in the trial of Michael Torres and 17 co-defendants. The evidence was overwhelming. The recordings, the documents, the financial records, it all painted a picture of systematic corruption that had infected multiple institutions. Torres was sentenced to 28 years in federal prison. The woman in the expensive suit got 22 years. The man from the storage facility, whose real name turned out to be Daniel Kramer, got 35 years plus additional charges for the murders of Jennifer Martinez and Thomas Park. They never charged him directly with Richard Caldwell's death, but everyone knew he'd been responsible. Detective Chen was promoted to lieutenant and put in charge of a new task force investigating corporate crime. She called me occasionally, asking for advice on financial systems and data analysis. We'd become something like friends, bonded by that strange night when my boring life had exploded into something extraordinary. I still work at Pemberton Insurance, though it's a very different company now. New management, new oversight, new culture focused on actual ethics instead of just the appearance of them. They promoted me to senior data analyst and gave me a role in rebuilding the systems that had been compromised. The work is meaningful now. I'm not just processing claims anymore. I'm helping ensure that what happened can never happen again. Sometimes I think about that rainy Tuesday evening when I found a wallet on the street, how easily I could have walked past it, how my entire life changed because I decided to try to return it to its owner. Richard Caldwell never knew that his desperate gambit would work, that someone would find his note and have the courage to see it through. I keep a photo on my desk now. It's from a newspaper article about the trial. Richard Caldwell's widow and daughters attended every day of the proceedings. After the sentencing, Mrs. Caldwell found me in the courthouse hallway. She didn't say anything. She just hugged me and whispered, "Thank you," before walking away. That photo reminds me that sometimes the smallest actions, picking up a lost wallet, reading a handwritten note, deciding to care about a stranger's last message, can change everything. Richard Caldwell died trying to expose corruption. But because of that note, because of a chance encounter on a rainy street, his fight wasn't in vain. Justice isn't always swift, it isn't always certain, but sometimes, if you're brave enough and lucky enough and refuse to look away when it would be easier to do so, justice prevails. My name is Marcus Webb. I'm 32 years old. I'm a data analyst at an insurance company, and I helped take down a criminal conspiracy by doing nothing more than trying to return a wallet to its rightful owner. It's not the life I expected, but it's a life I'm proud of, and that makes all the difference, and so we reach the end of another unforgettable journey. If this story touched your heart, stirred your emotions, or simply made you feel something, you can help me in 3 simple ways. Leave your like. It's quick, free, and shows me I'm on the right path. Subscribe and turn on the bell to never miss our upcoming stories. Comment below what moment struck you the most in this story. Every like, every subscription, every comment motivates me to bring you more engaging emotional stories full of twists and turns. And if you know someone who would love this story, share it. Sometimes a good narrative is exactly what someone needs for their day. Thank you for being here with me. See you in the next story.